At 10 minutes now past 9, we say good morning and welcome to our two Capitol observers, Capitol reporters, Marty Owens and Andy Friedel, who join us in the studio this morning to recap and take a look back at all the happenings at the legislature. And I know that the two of you have also lined up some, guests to discuss some of the happenings that occurred. And so we welcome you and the guests who
Thanks,
I believe
Bob.
will be joining us by phone this morning. So, Marty, Andy, nice to have you here. I also want to just mention, again, that we are simulcasting here at the Weekly News. You can reach the simulcast at mncapitalnews.com. Again, for video of the broadcast, go to mncapitalnews.com. Well, let me ask you this. What did the legislative, either one of you, but what did the leaders of the legislature hope to accomplish when their mission began at the most recently completed session? And give me your take on what was accomplished.
Andy, what do you want? Yeah.
Well,
Or is that too tough a question?
No.
that's not too tough a question.
Was anything accomplished?
When it started out, everyone who came by, and we do our show Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. right there at the Capitol, and whenever legislators came by right away, this was the year of the bonding,
Right.
and which is opposite the year when you do the budget, and so it was going to be all about jobs.
How many
And
were created?
Oh, that's a good
I don't
question.
know if I can answer
Oh,
that.
okay.
But the throwout question every time obviously was the Viking Stadium. So I would say those were the two things.
Yeah, definitely. They all came out of the gate talking about, well, how important it was to create jobs, because that's what the poll data says. Minnesotans overwhelmingly are concerned about jobs in the economy, Bob. So,
Right.
being good politicians, they looked at the polls and said, here's what we're gonna get done this year. It took them a long time to start talking about an actual bonding bill. I mean, the governor threw out close to $1 billion bonding bill, 780 million, I think, was his. And the GOP balked at that and said, no way are we going to do that. Here's a 400 and some billion dollar bonding bill. How about that? Well, in the end of it, I think they came to a compromise and got a bonding bill done, which got some of what the governor wanted and some of what the GOP wanted, but it was definitely a compromise.
Now, yeah, well, and compromise can be a good thing, although there are some people who sometimes look at it as a bad thing to have to compromise and won't do it unless compromise to them means you come my way all the way. Let me, though, just go back to the question about jobs creation. I know that was a big issue. That was one of the things that was talked about prior to the legislature convening.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a whole lot that I could see that was done. But the Viking Stadium, even though that was a little controversial, does create some jobs, some construction jobs for a
Sure.
couple of years, right?
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. I mean, Andy and I, we talked to a lot of legislators up there during the session about could you quantify the amount of jobs in a bonding bill or in a stadium? And the answer we got back, Andy, was, well, not really. We don't know how to quantify that,
Yeah.
but we know there will be.
And we're gonna have some former legislators on the phone who will put that question
Former and
to them.
current, yeah.
Right, and I believe
That's right.
we have one of the guests on the phone right now. Two guests on the phone.
Yeah, we
right
should
now.
have Paul Gardner, a former legislator who served in the House from 2007 to 2010 and routinely gives us political analysis on Capitol Conversations, and Senator Jeff Hayden, who served in the House and now serves in the Senate.
Right. Good morning. Welcome to both of you. Appreciate your taking time from your schedules to join us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'd like to ask both of you, now that the session is over, and I know Senator Hayden, you were very much involved in what was taking place over there. Former Representative Gardner, of course, an astute observer of the Capitol scene. I think he's been a guest not only on Marty and Andy's show, but he's also provided some insight for us here in the KFAI News. How do you assess the session? What What were your expectations when the session started? What did you hope or think might be accomplished? And then, as it has ended, how do you assess the performance of the legislators? Either one of you.
Well, I guess I'll start. This is Senator Hayden, Jeff Hayden. Thank
Yes,
you guys
sir.
for having me. Well, I based on the session before, where essentially we just had these ALEC right-wing bills that were forced down our throat in the marriage amendment. I had very low expectations, for the legislative session with the current legislative leadership. And it started out with a bang by Senator Rosen, who, depending on how you feel about the stadium, is getting a lot of praise on negotiating the stadium deal. Well, I think, forget that she started out by leading the movement to take out former Senator Ellen Anderson as the PUC chair. So that's how I was indoctrinated or introduced to the Senate, is by watching a fabulous former legislator who's a great steward of the environment for purely political reasons being not confirmed. And then after that, we had to endure the photo ID conversation in which we are going out there looking to suppress and create a poll tax for people for people to be able to vote in our democracy. So that's how the legislative session started out for me. It started out with the same bang that it went last year, which is really bad for Minnesotans, in my opinion.
All right, Paul Gardner.
Hi. I was a suburban Democrat, so it's interesting to talk to people in our community about their impressions of the legislature. First, let me say congratulations to my friend Senator Hayden, who I haven't talked to since he was elected to the Senate.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know if it's a step up or step down for the Senate. I'll have to tell us later. Well, I was in from 2007 to 10, and then now that I was liberated by the voters, I can look a little bit more like a layperson on how things are done and not think about the blow-by-blow on a daily basis. But as I talk to people here in the community, I think the thing that has struck them about the legislature's performance anyway is that they seem to avoid a lot of choices through using constitutional amendments. They have seen the opportunity to put the state on a sound fiscal path, really just punt it away. We've still got people saying that they that we have this great surplus due to fiscal management, when in fact we've got something like a $3.5 billion deficit building up for next year because of the K through 12 shift, as well as a structural deficit of about $1 billion. And so when I saw proposals to kind of add to that, whether it was tobacco bonds or a couple other of initiatives, I was just kind of shocked. I was under the impression there were people there who were going to bite the bullet and do what they needed to do to make tough choices, and none of those choices really emerged at all. I think in terms of how people feel right now about the totality of the 2 years is that this year was really the stadium session, no matter what anyone wants to say about other stuff that might have passed or didn't get passed or vetoed. That's really what sucked all the oxygen out of the room in the media, and so that's what people are thinking about.
Yeah, let me ask you both this, if I may. When you talk to people, what kind of response or reaction are you getting to the stadium bill?
Well, I would say in my district, anecdotally, and some of the work we've done as we sent out legislative surveys, it's about 80% no, in my district. People really feel strongly about publicly financing of stadiums. And they also said if we are going to do it, they wanted that to be their choice. So in Minneapolis, that's where they had the referendum that they really feel like the mayor and the legislature sidestepped kind of the charter referendum that they put in place in '97 that says if they spend over $15 million, that it should go to the voters. So people were really, really angry as I talked to them. I just walked the May Day parade last Sunday, and pretty much every question I got was, thank you for not voting for the stadium, or how did you vote for it? And when I told them I didn't vote for it, then they applauded me.
Senator Hayden, I wanted to ask you because we tried to contact Minneapolis City Council member Betsy Hodges, who they're holding a meeting or a hearing on Monday to talk about the specifics for how the stadium is going to affect the citizens of Minneapolis. Are you going to be there on Monday? And can you tell us a little bit about how it will directly affect the citizens of Minneapolis?
Well, yeah, I don't think that I'm going to be there. I mean, this is kind of sitting in the city's hands now to kind of ratify the deal that was set at the legislature. But loosely, the city would have to come up with about $150 million to pay $150 million as part of the debt service package. That would be the kind of quadri of taxes, entertainment taxes that they have going now to pay for the convention center. In 2020, those bonds would be paid for, and the city would be on the hook for that, as well as ongoing maintenance on the stadium for the next 30 years, which is projected at $178 million now. But with inflation, that number is sure to grow. And so they expect that entertainment tax that's taking care of the convention center and the building for us to draw people into the city. They expect for those bonds to be paid off for us to pay for the stadium, for us to continue on with our convention center, Meet Minneapolis activities, as well as the Target Center right now is owned wholly by the property tax payers in Minneapolis. There's $50 million that is still owed on it, and the owner of the Timberwolves wants $100 million or at least $100 million facelift, and so they expect some extra revenues out of that to be able to kind of participate in doing a facelift for the Target Center, which is essentially another arena that we have. So we are deeply embedded with these, or at least the city is deeply embedded with these kind of sports franchise folks, and really feel like, I guess 7 of those folks and the mayor really feel the value that they get for that is good for the city. I disagree. I think that, as a sports fan and following all my life, that this is somewhat of a racket. In St. Louis right now, they're just telling them the same thing. If they don't give them $150 million, they're going to move the team to Los Angeles. It sounds very familiar as to what happened to us here. So that's what I know loosely. I have not been someone that has been involved in negotiations because I've never supported the deal.
Let me bring that up to Representative Gardner. Paul, I guess you're probably hearing something different in the suburban area, but a couple of things. One thing's for sure is the negotiations about this stadium deal, and even the Vikings finances have been kept secret. There's been a lack of transparency. But I want to know what it says about the community or the state in general that there were all these other priorities. We're in the middle of one of the worst recessions in the country's history. There are other significant problems taking place in our state, and yet the legislature and the media this year chose to focus on giving basically $500 million to an owner, a sports franchise owner who's already rich. And then on top of that, Paul Gardner, I'd like you to talk about, we sort of drape these things in crazy euphemisms, and the governor, this was his priority, he called it the People's Stadium.
Right. Well, there's a couple of interesting things here. First, in terms of determining who won in the session, there were the cover photo in the Star Tribune a week or two ago showed Ziggy Wolf shaking hands with celebrating Vikings fans, and a lot of people just said, "Wow! Here's the winner."
Right.
Of this whole discussion. I think the picture said 1,000 words. In terms of out here in the suburbs, actually, the county commissioner's race for Commissioner Tony Bennett's district actually has become very competitive as a result of his proposal and support for an Arden Hills Stadium, which is it would have been just 2 miles from my house. There are people on the right and the left who are now challenging him for that seat because they're hopping mad about the proposal to have Ramsey County kick in an additional sales tax for a Viking stadium. So you'll find actually people on the right and the left, the fiscal conservatives and the left wing and the Democratic, or the left wing and the Democratic Party really ticked off about the idea of corporate welfare. So you found people like John Marty and my representative Linda Runbeck and Senator Roger Chamberlain, who are conservative Republicans, on the same page here. So you could say it was a nonpartisan battle.
Okay, listen.
Well,
I just want to step in here a moment and go back to something that Senator Hayden referenced at the very beginning. He mentioned ALEC. A lot of people may not be aware that stands for the American Legislative Exchange Council. And they apparently have written lots of legislation that they have sent out to legislators
Bob,
all
it'd be
over the
helpful if
country.
you say who are they?
I said American Legislative
Yeah, no, but
Exchange
they're
Council.
comprised mostly of
Well,
large corporations,
yeah, it's large
wealthy
corporations
people.
that fund it, and a number of those corporations have now taken away their funding. They have stepped back from ALEC, and maybe that's because they didn't really understand what all was involved. But it's a fairly conservative, if we may say, fairly conservative organization, and the laws that are drafted are kind of cookie-cutter laws. They're the same ones that are sent out to every legislator, not every legislator, but every legislature and legislator that supports ALEC's stand. How big a role did ALEC play at the Minnesota legislature this year?
Well, I would say that ALEC had the potential to play a very large role. I think that what you saw in Wisconsin and Ohio and Indiana, the Scott Walker recall, the attack on collective bargaining, were all kind of generated through these ALEC pieces of legislation. They all came through. The governor.
Now, when you talk about Wisconsin, Senator, you're saying that the recall was a result of the governor's
ALEC.
support of ALEC-type legislation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, because we had a governor that, a Democratic governor that wasn't going to support that, he vetoed those bills. But the same exact bills, I have friends that serve in those states that are in the minority. Those bills that they are dealing with, those issues, were the same ones we were dealing with. The only difference was that we had a Democratic governor who vetoed those bills. So they had the potential to really, really dictate politics in Minnesota if it wasn't for Mark Dayton.
Can you talk about those specifically? One of them was the Stand Your Ground bill. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we had one called Doctrine, which started to really define that you could use a gun to kill someone if you felt threatened. And right now, it kind of is very specific that you only shoot to maim or to get away. You have to be in your own house. Well, they were to expand that you could have been in a boat, you could have been in a car. If you just, flat out felt like you were being threatened, no matter what, you could shoot to kill.
Just like the Trayvon Martin case.
Just like the Trayvon Martin case. It's the same issue. We saw attacks on that. This attack on tenure for teachers is an ALEC, driven issue. The right to work, which they had a hearing on in Minnesota, but then I think finally the leadership in the House and the Senate decided that would be really bad for them. But they did have a hearing, and there were threats all session long until the end. In the House, they had a major kind of blow up at the end of session, and there were threats, and they threatened in the Senate to bring that bill up to take away collective bargaining for unions. All of that stuff that you saw across the country, that was here. And if it wasn't that we had a Democratic governor who was really strong and looked them in the eye and told them and vetoed those bills, I told him he would, we would have the same issues here.
That's interesting, too, because we've asked all of you, kind of your assessment of the recently completed legislative session. How do you assess Governor Dayton's performance?
I have to say that the governor, though we disagreed on the major issue, which was the stadium, I do have to say that I really think that Governor Dayton did a very good job. He was very clear. He was very focused. He stood his ground. I think last year when he made the compromise, people were wondering if the GOP was going to be able to kind of roll him, if you will, into doing what they want. But this year, I think he really kind of got his sea legs under him. And I think he did a good job, with the exception, and I will say that we are on different sides of the state.
Well, yeah, you can agree to disagree without being disagreeable.
That's right.
Well, I'd like to hear. Let's hear from Paul Gardner. Now that you don't have any political. I don't know, Paul. You haven't denied that you'd ever run for office again, but you and the governor aren't chums, are you?
No, I have only met Governor Dayton once, but I'll say this, and I think the stadium example was very illustrative of this. Governor Dayton is a straight shooter. He says what he thinks, Um, he says what he thinks.
That's probably
very
him
clearly.
there, Paul Gardner.
That's probably
no.
the governor calling you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Gardner got them. But I think the real difference, though, is he says what he thinks. He doesn't do anything in a scheming kind of way. And I think you contrast that with Speaker Zellers, who got caught trying to have it both ways. And
Yeah, he was going to vote. He was going to vote against it, but hoped it passed, right?
Right. So the person who may actually get punished more might be Kurt Zellers for that lack of authenticity, whereas the governor was a real straight shooter and said what he wanted to do, even though people disagreed with him.
Well, aren't
So I
you
think
sympathetic
that
at all
helped him
for
on.
his position, Paul Gardner? Because Kurt Zellers, I mean, he's in a party where if you take a moderate or compromising stand, you're going to pay a political price for that right now with the Tea Party pulling in the other direction.
Well, I think the Republicans today at their convention are going to, I think some of the more moderate Republicans are going to have a wake-up call when they see the Ron Paul folks take over the party, where a lot of really good people are just going to be cleaned out. And I don't know if that's their own fault for not showing up or having people that didn't know how to manage money in the party or what.
Should mention that the Republicans are having their convention
In
down
St.
in
Cloud
St.
this
Cloud
weekend, yes.
this weekend. We'll have
But
Paul.
It's always good to give people a straight answer, and I always found when I talked to people at the door out here in the burbs that I had people say, "Paul, I like you because you don't run with the herd, or at least you gave me a straight answer." And if you try and be wishy-washy about something, people get really cranky about that. They're looking for straight answers, and I think Governor Dayton. There are a lot of Republicans out here who told me they used to vote for Paul Wellstone because he was like that, and I think some people are okay living with Mark Dayton because they see that. They're looking for
Oh, well, they're
honest
looking
people.
for somebody. They may disagree, but if the person tells you what he stands on, and where he stands, it's a little easier, I think, to to support him or to back
Right.
them. Yeah.
Well, I was just in North Carolina on business for something else, and I actually met with some legislators, all Republicans, and they were actually straight shooting Republicans and who were in positions of leadership, also trying to tamp down on the Tea Party element, but they didn't have any problem leading, doing what they were doing because people respected what they were doing.
Yeah, let me just mention, too, we talked a little bit about ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, and I just want to note that Common Cause of Minnesota has filed complaints with 2 state agencies claiming that the policy incubator, ALEC, is in violation of state laws governing lobbying and charitable activities. So we'll have to follow that story as time progresses and see how things end up there. It's 9:32 now, and you're listening to the KFAI Weekly News. We're back.
Thanks for
Marty Owen and Andy Friedel with us. I thought we had a break there.
Well,
but
I was just going to
apparently
say thank you to Senator Jeff Hayden
Well,
and then Representative Paul Gardner.
We
for
haven't
joining
cut them
us.
off, have we? Aren't they still there?
I think they have to go.
Did they have to go? Oh, well.
Listen, I do have to run, you guys.
Okay.
But I appreciate your work. Thank you for KFAI for continuing to kind of make sure that we have information on both sides. I think you guys do a great job, and please call me anytime if you want me on the show.
Okay, appreciate your joining us this morning, Senator Jeff Hayden and former Representative Paul Gardner. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
And Andy Friedel and Marty Owens with us here this morning. I know that the 6th District Convention is being held in St. Cloud, as we mentioned just a moment ago. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
The state convention.
The state convention, yeah.
Yep.
Did I say district? The
Sixth
6th
district.
It's in the 6th district.
Right,
But
right.
it's the state convention, correct? And one of the big bones of contention there, I think, is going to be coming up with the candidate for the 6th district in the Republican Party for the Democrats, because they're going to have to, when the Democrats meet, they're going to have to come up with somebody there, or have they already? I think to run against Michelle Bachmann. I just wondered where that stands, but
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to find out.
Oh,
yeah, that's right. They
Jim
chose Jim Graves. That's
Yeah,
right.
from
yeah,
the Graves
a St.
Hotel
Cloud,
family.
a St. Cloud native who has the Graves Hotel. That's right. Well, I appreciate that because I was just kind of drawing a mental blank there for a minute, and I thank you. It's now 9:34, and we're going to pause momentarily, and then we'll be right back with more of the KFAI Weekly News. And we're back. Marty Owens, Andy Friedel joining me this morning here as we take a look back at the recently completed legislative session and all the fun and games that are likely to be ahead of us in the future in this election season. I wanted to just talk a little bit and get your observations and thoughts. As we mentioned, the GOP state convention being held in St. Cloud this weekend, but the Republican Party here in Minnesota has experienced a few problems, not the least of which is financial. They've had to change some leadership, and there seems to be a real tug of war between the very conservative Ron Paul libertarian element, if you will, and perhaps a little more moderate Republican group in the party. Any thoughts or observations on how this is likely to shake out? Because it's probably going to manifest itself quite a bit here at the state convention this weekend, Andy?
Well, just, from what I've been reading in the paper, I don't follow it beyond what most other people would be doing. But one of the things that was interesting just recently is that Tim Pawlenty went down to the Oklahoma Republican Convention, and he almost got booed off the stage by...
Too liberal.
He's too liberal, by the Ron Paul contingent. And I don't know if that will happen here in Minnesota, but they foresee taking control and really having the majority of delegates for the national convention. So, if you like politics and drama, it should be interesting.
Yeah, I think there really is a fight for the heart and soul of the Republican Party going on. I think you saw that when there was an endorsement for, and we'll have Paul Demko from Politics in Minnesota on in a minute. He's down at the convention, but I just wanted to mention quickly that when moderate Republicans endorsed Horner in his race against Emmer and Dayton, any Republican who was a part of that was banned from the Republican Party for 2 years for that activity.
Yeah, I remember.
And so a lot of moderate Republicans, including some congressmen and others who had been very well
Former
placed.
Governor Arnie Carlson.
Sure, absolutely. Former Governor Arnie Carlson, who we had on the program. But listen, there's no question that fight is going on, the struggle for the heart and soul. And when you look at what can happen to the party or which direction it's pulling in, it's definitely the Tea Party conservatives who are pulling the party further right. And so there's been fallout for things that any kind of compromise, any kind of moderate stand. Senjum's had his troubles. Zellers has had his troubles. What the people in the party want, or that wing of the party, that faction of the party, is for their elected officials to stand firm no matter what on their issues and do not compromise. That's their thing.
We have Paul Demko, I believe, on the line with us from Politics in Minnesota. Are you there, Paul?
I am. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule to join us this morning. You're in St. Cloud at the state GOP convention.
I have just arrived in St. Cloud. I was hoping to be here a bit earlier, but I am on the ground.
Okay, well, that's good. We have boots on the ground in St. Cloud this morning. That's comforting to know. Well, what are you anticipating at this convention? Can you give us just a little bit about what your thoughts about what you're looking for or expecting to happen, Paul?
Well, yeah, I think you guys have nailed it to some degree. I think there's the big question is how do you sort out kind of the Ron Paul supporters versus kind of the rest of the GOP delegates, and people are expecting that probably about somewhere in the neighborhood of half of the folks who have secured delegate slots for the state convention are Ron Paul supporters, and I think the party's really wrestling with how to handle those folks and whether to embrace them and embrace the energy that they bring, or to be very wary of them and there are concerns that it's more of a Ron Paul cult than really rank and file Republicans that will support the party. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, particularly in the Senate race, where you have Kurt Bills, who's a longtime Ron Paul backer, has been endorsed by Ron Paul, and seems to have really the energy of those folks. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Let me ask you this, and you can maybe tell us where this kind of stands in relationship to the entire intra-party fighting there with the GOP. But Representative John Kriesel, a Republican who is retiring or stepping down after serving one term, apparently he's had some heated exchanges or doesn't necessarily agree or give lots of kudos to, say, Tom Emmer, who was the Republican candidate for governor. Apparently they've had some back and forth, and I believe Kriesel has had some contentious discussion with
Kiffmeyer. She said
yes,
he lacked
Mary
courage.
Kiffmeyer. and is this kind of an indication or an example of the type of fighting that's going on in the Republican Party, and is it likely to tear the party apart?
Well, I think it is, because if you look at the exchange with Kiffmeyer, it specifically got touched off over the Vikings stadium, and I think that is a touchstone issue for a lot of folks. I think you saw it was very divisive within the Republican caucuses, and you saw people. I'm thinking of like Senators Nenow and Thompson and Hoffman kind of openly criticizing leadership over Twitter and whatnot over it. So I think that is, and that's one of the issues I'm looking forward to talking to some of the kind of grassroots Republicans about today. Is how much anger is there among the base over passing a $1 billion Viking stadium for a billionaire when you have the majorities in the House and Senate in Republican control for the first time in 30 years. So it's going to be interesting to see how much blowback there is from the base, because it means one of those issues that, interestingly, I think inspires a lot of heat from the base on the left and the right. I think you'd see the same thing if there was a DFL state convention today, and a lot of anger about some of their members who voted for it.
Let me ask you about State Senator and Tax Chair Julianne Ortman, who was denied the GOP party endorsement and has to go to a primary now. Is that part of this whole, I guess,
not
conservative
enough.
moderate split in the Republican Party, or how do you assess that?
Yeah, I think that is true. You had two challengers for her, a guy named Kevin Masserud, who was very much kind of the Ron Paul faction, and then I'm blanking on the guy's first name, Schwichtenberg, who had run for office a couple times before. He ultimately proved to be the stronger challenger. But yes, I think she was being challenged from the right. You saw her try to inoculate herself, I think, by reversing some of her previous stance. She had been a supporter of internet sales tax, and
I think it's sales tax on clothing too, or something. Wasn't that one of the issues that was brought up?
Yeah, last year you saw her speak openly about looking at tax expenditures and whether we needed to close some loopholes. That got shut down very quickly. But you saw her, she was a very vocal anti-stadium person during the debate. Like I said, she reversed herself on the internet sales tax. I think there were a couple other things too. So, and she's Carver County. It's about as conservative a swath of the state as you're going to get. So, I think maybe the activists there feel like we should have somebody who is as conservative as the activists in that district are.
Is Senate Majority Leader Dave Senjum, is he likely to be in some trouble too?
He was asked right at the end of session if he intended to run for leadership again, and he did not. He deferred on that question. He said it's way too early to answer that question. He said he was definitely running for re-election, though. There have been rumblings of him possibly facing a challenge, but I have not seen any evidence of that. He definitely faces a lot of unhappiness within his caucus. But whether that translates into an endorsement challenge or real trouble in keeping his seat, I haven't seen any evidence of that yet.
And I've got to ask you this question. What is your thought, or how do you view the retirement of Representative Tom Rukavina?
It's a shocker, especially because, nobody nobody loves a floor speech. Well, maybe Mark Biskins, but short of Mark Biskins, nobody loves a floor speech more than Tom Rukavina.
Well, he loved the legislature, yeah.
Yeah, and real creature of the place, and I think it caught everybody off guard. And I don't have any insight into what was motivating him. I don't know if he's got a job, or I do know he's getting married. Maybe that played into it. But yeah, I think it caught everybody off guard, and I think he'll be missed.
Okay, Andy?
Paul, before we sort of leave the GOP state convention, I wanted to ask probably the most interesting races for U.S. Senate, the endorsement for U.S. Senate, between three candidates, Pete Hegseth, Doc Severson, and Kurt Bills. Kurt Bills was recently endorsed by Ron Paul, and I think Speaker Kurt Zellers. So he's gotten some momentum. So talk about that race and what Republicans are looking at for a challenger to Amy Klobuchar's seat.
Yeah, I think it's widely perceived that Bills is the favorite. He has, I think it's 42 GOP legislators backing him, including, as you said, House Speaker Zellers. Hegseth has kind of the rock star resume. He's a decorated war veteran, went to Princeton, really a young up-and-comer. Severson has, he has the advantage of perseverance. He's been in this race a long time, and I think he locked up some support from a fair number of people back when he was seen as the only credible contender in the race.
Well, he's also a former naval commander who flew fighter pilots or fighter planes off the deck of a carrier. He's got that going for him.
Yeah, that's correct. A former state rep who ran for Secretary of State.
Yeah, that didn't work out.
No, he lost to Mark Ritchie.
Pretty badly, if I recollect.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I will say all the executive branch GOP candidates did lose. Somewhat surprising considering their big wins in the House and Senate. But yeah, I think most people think Bills is the person to beat because of that. Again, that Ron Paul element, and he's an economics teacher and talks very eloquently about the kind of systemic budgetary problems facing the country, can very much articulate the line of thinking that has made Ron Paul such a force. So that's everybody thinks he would be, and he would have everybody knows this is a long shot race. Klobuchar's formidable. She's got huge amounts of money. She's very popular. So maybe your best shot at having a chance is running somebody who can really fire up some people who maybe aren't typical voters, who are aren't typical GOP voters anyway. So maybe he is your potentially your best chance at taking a credible run at Klobuchar. We'll see.
Well, Paul, let me ask you a quick question. After all this shakes out with the convention and whatnot, do you think the voters, when it comes to the fall elections, are going to forget some of the GOP troubles? We had the Koch and Broadcorp scandal kind of open up the session, and then they're $2 million missing. The party was basically evicted or lost their lease because they weren't paying their rent on their offices over by the Capitol. Do those things stick in the minds of voters come the fall, or what do you think?
That's a great question. It's something I wonder about because folks like us, we're so deep into the nitty gritty of this stuff that I think we tend to think that it's going to be resonating with your average everyday voter, and you just assume kind of that everybody knows this stuff. But a lot of times that's not true. People, they're taking their kids to soccer practice and cooking dinner and worrying about their job. So, the sex scandal is probably going to stick in people's minds. The GOP party money troubles, I don't think that's necessarily going to resonate with your average everyday voter. Where it might be a problem is whether they have any kind of political apparatus to lend support to their candidates and to help them, and that that might fall a lot more squarely on some of the local Republican party chapters and local party units, and they might have to pull a lot more of the weight in terms of doing GOTV work and phones and door knocking and all that stuff. That's really kind of the bread and butter of retail politics.
Paul, I'd have to disagree about the sex scandal sticking in people's minds. I think the Republicans did a really good job of shutting that down, sidelining Amy Koch, getting rid of anyone connected with her and just not letting
weren't
people
talking
talk about
were
it
they,
at all.
Andy? Yeah.
And the only one I think that's going to keep this going is probably Michael
Broadcorp.
Broadcorp.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do make a good point. I mean, Amy Koch gave, by the way, a wonderful, moving farewell speech in the Senate. It was like, my God, we haven't seen that woman all year. So I agree with that. But yeah, Broadcorp, it seems like he still has the ability to, when he rears his head, to get the media's attention and to bring this back into the spotlight. So, he's got this lawsuit kind of hovering out there, and has kind of threatened to kind of make waves and expose other,
other indiscretions by legislators, right?
Yeah. So I guess it's, does he really have the ability to do that, or is that just a false ego? We'll have to see.
We should mention Paul Pens for the politics in Minnesota. They have an online politicsinminnesota.com, also the Legal Ledger. Paul, I suppose you have to get back to work down there. You got a lot to cover. Will you be all weekend down there?
I don't know. I'm going to see. Today is kind of the big day. Tomorrow, you just got Republican National Committee selections, and you do have national delegate picks. So I'm not sure. I'm going to be down here today, and then I'll see about tomorrow.
But you are anticipating perhaps a bit of a fight between the more moderate elements of the GOP and the more conservative ones?
Well, I mean, I think between the Paul people and the other folks, I think you're going to see that play out in every aspect of the convention.
All right. Appreciate your taking time to join us this morning. We've been visiting with Paul Demko, reporter for Politics in Minnesota, and thank you for your insights, sir.
Thanks for having me.
And this is the KFAI Weekly News. Our time is 9:52. It's about 68 degrees outside.
Oh,
yeah,
thank
don't take
goodness
us back
it's
to
not.
winter,
Well, I know
Bob.
it. I know
Jeez,
it. Every once in a while we have a tendency to misspeak. And I'll tell you, we can never get consensus because we've got several different sites we go to for the temperature. Plus, we have a thermometer here, and none of them ever are in agreement.
KFAI
So
resident meteorologist.
Most of the time, we just take a guess.
It's going to be a hot one.
Yeah, it's going to be hot, and we're headed toward a high of near 90 degrees. That'll be the warmest it's been since, when? Back March? Or just, I don't know.
Oh, that's right.
You
I
know,
think we
yeah.
hit it.
Yeah.
We
Remember
hit
how?
one day in
Remember how?
March, yeah.
Maybe we had one day.
It
in
was
between, but-
sweltering, Bob.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, that was one day. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I just wanted to cover a couple of things on the legislative.
Well, yeah, I don't want to. We're not ready to wrap
Yeah,
up
okay.
yet, but I'd like to have you just kind of run down some of the more significant retirements or changes that you see taking place over there.
There will be some significant retirements, but let me hit the bullet list quick. Voter ID is going to be on the ballot.
Right.
That's going to be a highly contested issue. You're going to see a lot of money pouring for that. Of course, the gay marriage issue is going to be on the ballot. You're going to see a lot of money and a lot of advertising pouring for that. And of course, the entire legislature is up for election this year, both all the seats in the Senate and all the seats in the House. So everybody's going to be running. Expect some door knocking in your neighborhood, political
Because of
ads.
redistricting.
And redistricting, yes, exactly. And that always ended up in court. But if I have to say one thing that concerned me about this legislative session and the state in general under Governor Mark Dayton, and this is a criticism, is it's actually become less transparent up there, not more transparent under this Democratic governor. So the secret meetings with the Vikings, the negotiations on the bonding bill, the end of session, closed-door negotiations that continue to happen up there at the Capitol. And as long as people don't get outraged or start voicing concern about this,
Nothing will change.
Right. The backroom deals will continue to be cut. There'll be a very few number of people involved in the dissemination of information, and so it's going to be sanitized, redacted, filtered. It's going to come to you in a way that isn't true and honest, and you're going to be making your decisions as a public out there on information that's been spun.
We'll be going back to the good old days of the smoke-filled back rooms where all the decisions
That's
were
essentially
made, right?
what we have, Bob, without the smoke.
Yes, right. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit, if we can, about some of the retirements and people who are maybe seeking different offices. I had mentioned when we were talking with Paul Demko about Tom Rukavina, because I know that surprised a lot of people, Representative Rukavina stepping down. But there are some other significant retirements, too, and perhaps you could just touch. I mean, there's quite a few. I don't know that we'd have time to go through
It's about 10 from each house.
Yeah,
And some are
so
seeking
there are going to
other
be
office.
some major changes at the legislature coming up, yeah. So who do you see as some of the major players that are going to be no longer there?
Well, Jeff Michel is a big retirement from the Republican Party.
Right.
He was kind of seen as an up-and-comer and surprised, I think, a lot of people when he decided to retire. Of course, Linda Higgins was a longtime DFLer up there, and she's going to be leaving the Senate.
Mindy Greiling would be another one from the House.
Yep, that's a
in the
huge
DFL.
retirement. Of course, John Kriesel, who people thought was a good legislature because he was independent-minded.
He'd only been there one term
term.
and had made kind of a name for himself, but he's moving on.
He's moving on. And there are some people that are going to leave the one house to run for the Senate, maybe. So Kent Eakin is a guy from way, way up north in Minnesota. He's a DFLer who's going to leave the House and go over, and Terry Westrom's another one who wants to run for the Senate.
And
from
Linda
the House.
Higgins, isn't she running for county commissioner?
Correct. She's going to run for Hennepin County Commissioner, so she'll have her hands full.
And that's kind of a big race.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'll be interesting to follow.
And then there were a lot of them, of course, that lost endorsement battles. I know my state senator from my district, Ken Kelash.
That's right.
Lost the endorsement to Melissa Halverson Wickland in Bloomington.
And Mary Jo McGuire and
Right, yeah.
and Senator John Marty.
Marty.
And Mary Jo McGuire lost. I think she lost or was displaced in the last. Did we had her on? Remember, Andy?
Yeah.
And she just been. She lost her former House position because she was redistricted out,
Yeah.
and so this happened to her again, where she's now had to compete with a colleague, a friend.
Yeah, and in Minneapolis, same thing with Marion Green and Frank Hornstein. She lost the endorsement. So
Yeah, and then there are, of course, those who are paired, with incumbents because of redistricting with incumbents within their own party. People are going to have to run against each other, and then there are some incumbents who didn't receive endorsement, but may have to run in a primary.
Well, Larry House is
Yeah.
a Republican from Walker, right?
yeah.
And
Mhm.
he's gonna he'll have to run against a DFLer up there,
Right.
John Purcell.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Okay. Well, that about wraps it up, unless you have any final thoughts as to what we should be looking for as we travel down the road to Election Day in November. But I know that we can count on the two of you to keep us posted of some of the major changes. Now, as I understand it, of course, the program is going to be back on when the legislature convenes.
Capital Conversation.
Conversations.
yeah, well,
But you two will be keeping us posted. You'll be watching as things develop. As
we're
we
going to
head
come
toward
back
Election
for a
Day.
third season, Bob. But Andy is in contract negotiations right now. We're talking to her agent, so it could be tough.
Yeah, well, and she's a tough one to negotiate with, and her agent is even worse.
That's
so,
what I hear.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for joining us, Andy
Thanks,
Friedel
Bob.
and Marty Owens.
Thanks, Bob.
You have our undying appreciation.
Likewise.
For the work that you do at the Capitol and for keeping us posted and for your astute political observations. We had production assistance this morning provided by Paul Broha and reporter C.J. Niles. Our engineer is Lenny Chisholm. Dale Connolly, the KFAI news director and producer. Matt Ealing, Catherine Loudenschlager, producers for Capitol Conversations. KFAI's theme was composed by Scott Keeper. We appreciate your taking time to join us this morning. I want to remind you once again that Capital Conversations will be back on the air for a third season at the start of the next legislative session, and partnering once again with Public Record Media and with KFAI Radio News. And of course, the KFAI Weekly News returns next Friday morning at 9 o'clock with another scintillating show. So we hope that you will join us. A warm one today, headed toward a high of near 90 degrees. Have a great weekend, everyone, and stay cool. It's 10 o'clock, and you're tuned to KFAI 90.3 FM, Minneapolis, 106.7 FM in St. Paul, a member of Independent Public Radio.